This series was like Roman Empire, Game of Thrones, but for young adults. This is the An Ember in the Ashes quartet. This series started off feeling like The Hunger Games mixed with Gladiator and Spartacus. But as the series progressed, like by the second and third books, it started getting real Game of Thrones meets Gladiator and Spartacus. And baby, I was having a blast. Although it's a young adult book, it gets really close to that new adult fantasy. Like there isn't much cursing, there isn't much sex, but the violence is there. There's like a lot of violence. It's a lot of like action, and it does have a lot of mature themes to it. I did find it correlated to a lot of what's going on in the real world right now. It also shows that like how much of what we're going through isn't that new, and it's just something that's always been happening, and it keeps happening, and we just kind of gotta dismantle it so we can stop it happening. And that's part of what this book was about. In this series, it mirrored like the genocide that is currently happening right now in the Middle East with Palestine and Israel. Like it's mirroring that. And then additionally, there was like an emperor in here, and then he had like this person that was like advising him, and it was giving very much like Trump and Elon Musk. And I was just like, girl, what's going on? What are you trying to say? It's wild that I'm reading this right now, and this is the world that I'm living in. And baby, this book, let me tell you, this book starts off in the first book, like the very Hunger Games element. It was less magical, it was less fantastical. It had like fantasy moments and fantasy elements. At first, like the fantasy was kind of like mythical. And as the story kind of progressed, you kind of got to see a little bit more of the fantastical elements. But like once you get to like the second and third book, baby, it was all Game of Thrones, and the fantasy just kept ramping up until the end, where it's just like all out fantasy, all out drama, all out just like, I'm sorry, it was very Game of Thrones for me. I've never read A Song of Ice and Fire, so I can't really compare it to that, but I've seen Game of Thrones from beginning to end. I'll give you that. It does not have like the kind of surprise deaths in a way, but it has very impactful deaths in that same way. Like how like Ned Stark at the beginning was like a shock, the Red Wedding was a shock. People just dying in that way, like the shock of it, like it doesn't really have that. It just has the brutality and the intensity of like, bitch, you're like, people are just dying in these civil situations where it's just like you're in a civil situation and people are just getting like slaughtered in front of you. Like, girl, what's going on? Actually, thinking about it now, that same emperor that I'm thinking about that reminds me of Trump, he's also kind of reminded me of Diddy, because I mean, he wasn't like full on Diddy, but the fact that you were just like slaughtering people in like a very civil setting, baby, it's crazy. That's crazy to me. That was too much. I was just like, Additionally, in the first book, there was a love square element to it. That didn't overtake the story. It wasn't too much, and it kind of dissipated pretty quickly to me. Actually, no, by the second book, that love square was dismantled, baby. Like, by the second book, we had an OTP. It wasn't overrun with romance. I enjoyed the romance. It had moments with the romance, but I was invested. It had moments with Laia and Elias, our two main leads. They had one moment where she was like catching Elias up on like stuff that had just like happened to her, and it was like a whole lot of stuff, all kinds of different stuff happened, and out of everything that she said, he was like, so you kissed old boy over there, or did he kiss you? And I was just like, my nigga, like, how out of everything that she told you, you're gonna like ask her like, yo, the only thing that you picked up was that she kissed old boy over there, and then you trying to figure out like, who kissed who? Like, my boy, I understand. Relax. I understand. You gone. You gone, my nigga. Like, my boy is gone. You know what I'm saying? But Laia was gone too. My girl was gone off of her man. At first, I ain't gonna lie, because I read the first book twice, and I was not fully invested in their romance. I was like, I wanted to see where it was going, but I wasn't fully invested. And like as the story progressed, I got a lot more invested in their romance. But I won't say I was like super like deeply entrenched in it. I just was kind of like, I know y'all gonna be together. I love it already. I wasn't super like gushing over them, but I was rooting for them. I was like, yo, Laia's my girl. I'm loving her growth. Elias my homeboy. Laia, she reminded me a little bit of Alina from the Grisha trilogy, but I don't know, I liked her better better than I liked Alina. I couldn't stand Alina, but Laia did remind me a little bit of Alina mixed with Katniss. And then Elias reminded me so much of like Peeta. Like he kind of had the heart of Peeta, but he also kind of had a little bit of the looks, or at least the body of Gale from Hunger Games. Which is funny because in the first time I read An Ember in the Ashes, I didn't see it for like Laia and Elias getting together. I saw it for her and Keenan getting together, although Keenan was a bit of an asshole. And then it's like the second time I read it, I was like, nah, I'm not seeing it for Keenan. Which it made sense why I wasn't seeing it for Keenan the second time around, which is crazy. Like, why did I see it for Keenan the first time? Because, girl, I mean, is something amiss with me? Was it the red hair? It must have been the red hair. I must have been going up for the red hair because I like a little something different, you know. I like a little something different, but I also still like a hot body, so, you know, it was giving. So I was just like, I was kind of rooting for my girl to get with him because it's like, you know, it's interesting, but I was wrong. But aside from that, the action was great. The magical elements were great. The magical elements was like mythical creatures, like from my understanding, from Arabian and Asian myths and folklore. There were jinn, gulls, and whites, and ifrits. And then also there were augurs. I think I tried to Google that, like what augurs were. I don't know. I gotta look it up again. And I appreciated Sava Tahir's writing. I will say when it comes to the writing, the first time I read An Ember in the Ashes, I did not love her writing completely. It was kind of like on and off, hit or miss for me, because at times I felt like she would shorthand certain actions, like from one point to the next she would just kind of shorthand it. She would kind of be very descriptive and draw things out a little bit, which was fine, especially for like battles and stuff. You really got to be immersed in a battle or in like just very intense action scenes. But sometimes, and I understood like abbreviating like actions to kind of get from one place to the other, but I also kind of felt like it could have been tweaked a little bit where it wasn't over explaining something that was simple, but it also kind of gave you a sense of time and pace as you read it. Other thing that I didn't like about her writing the first time, which I still didn't like in the first book, but I kind of got used to, but it kind of annoyed me in the last book, was how she described certain things. Like she would describe, I don't know, certain actions or emotions or buildings, and in ways that just like I tried to picture it or tried to feel it and I couldn't connect to it because the descriptions just felt so poetic, but they kind of lost me. It felt like putting words together to make something sound beautiful, but it didn't really have a meaning to it. It meant something to the author, but you as the reader, like depending on who you are, you might connect to it. I didn't connect to it because I read and I was like, what does this mean? What does this feeling mean? What does that action mean? What does that description of like this thing mean? It meant not, like I kept rereading like sentences at times over and over again. I was like, what does that mean? I don't understand what that means. But it didn't really fully take away from my experience, from my reading experience. I could like bypass those moments and still not feel like I missed too much from the story. At least some of the criticisms that I saw for the book was that they didn't like the world building and that the world building didn't make sense. And for me, I didn't mind the world building. I didn't think anything was really amiss with the world building. And maybe on a reread, I would be able to kind of like pick up those issues with the world building, but I didn't really have a problem with the world building. One of the criticisms that I heard was that like the oppressed people and the different kinds of people, like different kind of tribes or clans or groups of people within the story, they all seemed more mixed and multicultural. Not even just multicultural, they looked like different kind of races. Those criticisms were saying that it didn't make sense that people were oppressed because it didn't give a clear delineation of why they were oppressed. It was just that like you're a part of a group, and it didn't explain why with you being a part of this group you would be oppressed by another group of people. But to me, how I read it, everybody was of different races. So to me, like the scholar people were like brown people, more like, you know, South Asian, Middle Eastern looking, and people like plebeians were black people, were like they look phenotypically black from the descriptions that I was reading. But I think in the first book you don't really get those kind of descriptions. I don't feel like the descriptions were clear fully on how people looked in the first book, and I feel like as the story progressed and we started getting to like backstories and descriptions on what people look like and where they and like what kind of cultural background they come from, you put two and two together on the world building on why some people might be oppressed and why some people might be in lower classes and how everything is set up. To me, because to me, illustrians were white people, plebeians were black people, and scholars were basically South Asian and like possibly Middle Eastern people, and then also tribes people were also kind of like just nomadic Middle Eastern people and possibly even more like North Asian looking people. So I'll give them that. Like I think when it comes to the world building, that might not be fully clear, but I don't know. For me, that's how I envisioned it, so it kind of helped me get into the world building in that way and understand why first things first, I didn't fully understand why people were oppressed. I'm gonna give you that. I don't fully understand why people were oppressed, but I just figured everybody's oppressed because your skin color, and then also as the story reveals why some of the conflict within the story happened. Overall, I went into the story for the entertainment of it, for the drama of it, and I was not disappointed. I enjoyed it. I had a blast. I had a good time. It was like a show for me. It was like binge watching a show. Like every book was like a season of a really good show. I was fully entertained. I'm hoping An Ember in the Ashes gets a show adaptation. I know that Paramount Studios, it's Paramount Studios, right? Either way, Paramount Studios, they bought the movie rights to An Ember in the Ashes even before the first book was done. I learned that that's something that's pretty common when it comes to books. Paramount has the rights to make a movie out of it, but I don't want them to make a movie because it's too much in this book, in this series, for it to just be like you cram a bunch of stuff into a movie or like pull out the full plot points and then string that together as a movie. It's not gonna be a good enough movie, baby. You're gonna need to do like 4 seasons, 4 good, compact, well budgeted, not well budgeted, well funded series, 4 well funded seasons of An Ember in the Ashes series. Like it needs to be done. Like everybody's trying to do their Game of Thrones. Like there's Wheel of Time, there's Rings of Power, there were Shadow and Bone. Like baby, Netflix fumbled that fucking bag. Cause baby, give it one more season and you could have wrapped everything up. You had gold on your hands. That series was good, and y'all was about to go into the Journey of Power. You know what? This is not about Lee Bardugo and the Grisha trilogy and Six of Crows. It's not about them right now. But I feel like An Ember in the Ashes could be its own kind of like Game of Thrones, like in that Game of Thrones arena of TV shows. It could be in that lane, but it doesn't have to like really try to be the next Game of Thrones exactly. Like it's got its things, it's got its elements, it's got its moments. It just needs to be a TV series, like a well-funded TV series, high budget. The budget needs to be on 10, 100 actually for this series because baby, there's so much action, so much drama, so much, I don't know, the political machinations were shaking me, baby. I was like, girl, what's going on? Like, why, baby, my head was spinning. I had a blast. Girl, pull out the budget, but I don't know. In this economy, I don't know if they're going to want to take a chance on making An Ember in the Ashes into a series. They might need to wait, maybe 4 years, hopefully 4 years. Let me know if you've also read the An Ember in the Ashes Quartet. How do you feel about the world building? Was the world building satisfactory for you? Was it good enough? Was the story good enough? Let me know how you felt about it because, baby, I enjoyed this book. I enjoyed this story. Leave a comment. Let me know if you've read An Ember in the Ashes, the quartet, or if you plan on reading it, or if I did convince you to read it. But let me know.